Okay, thank you. I think Ashley's going to introduce this, but I'll start off. Does anyone else want to take a seat, or you guys want to linger back there? You can linger. It's fine. Welcome, everyone, to the Kerouac House and to our My Queer Valentine reading. Thank you for coming. This is super exciting. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to have 2 readers and then a short intermission and then another 2 readers. And Ashley has agreed to introduce our readers, and then I'll introduce her at the very end. So anyways, thank you all. There's sweets and liquor in that that table over there if you want some.
That's better. So thank you for coming here. It means a lot to me and the Kerouac House and all of us. I was sitting at this random coffee shop a few months ago, I think, and I felt really I got this idea. Why not bring all these amazing queer women I know together to do a reading? Why haven't I really thought about this before? So I got started. I started messaging several people, and this amazing, lineup happened. And then the Kerouac House offered to host it. And I'm just thankful that you're all here and that this is happening. So our first reader is Claire Robin Thorne. And yeah. Claire is in the midst of a reclamation of her soul, of finding her voice and her body as her voice, and her body keeps changing. The past few years of writing and reading aloud at local literary events have been essential in that. And now she is also organizing and curating her own event, a quarterly literature and art event for queer voices called The Hidden Continent, which is amazing. The first one was 3 days ago. It's the thing she is most proud of. Also, if she's honest, she still finds it hard to believe any of those things are a part of her now, but they are. So welcome, Claire.
Okay. Thank you, Ashley. I've got a couple pieces here. A lot of this is poetry, which is not normally my stuff, but recently it has been. I'm just going to jump right into it. I don't normally introduce my stuff, so thank you so much. Okay, this one's called Ocean Wave. Can pain be a quiet ocean? Can it be slow drifting under empty skies, strong winds cooling against opaque seas, winds you can tangle like string between fingers but can't catch? Can it be a gentle current guiding you from nowhere to distant nowhere, watching your small wake subsumed in the placid expanse? Can it be the pull of heavenly bodies, a whisper as ancient as forms, a thread of wisdom stretching back to the first moment that draws us in circles? Can it be nothing more than the cruel invention of memory that burdens us with the need to return to shores we've never known? That was my first piece. That's a little bit sedate. This next one's a little bit more intense. I'll introduce it simply to say that it's dedicated to the TSA. What is that? Yeah. Yeah. My body is an IED. I am hijacked genetics, built secret in nuclear homes, remade from the materials of daily being, wrapped in duct tape and scars. This is why you call me a bomb. This body and bombs frighten you. You wish we were just objects and not messages of light, luminous, of fury, screaming defiantly there to bring down imperial castles, engulf cold ideology in ruins, and bring sun to still night. I am abandoned at street side to threaten capital skyscrapers, make the vehicles of industry halt, put back panic in normative hearts, and disrupt the calm, uncritical air. and I'm the proof that you're lying, and have since rules existed to establish a body and deem the rest criminal, to deify one and divest all else, to claim bodies like continents to be owned, used, and discarded, to teach beings of light how to want for oblivion. Thank you. This next one's a little bit goofy. I grew up watching Sailor Moon. This is called How to Beat Evil. If I were a magical girl, I think I'd just want to stay transforming forever, away from the melancholy gravity of schoolwork, away from the unimaginable creatures that await, floating there in abstract space, iridescent with possibility, spiraled in ribbons, frail nakedness melted away in a TV-appropriate loss of anatomical detail. I'd rather just be that radiant symbol of strength, beauty, and justice in the first moment it's known, a reflection of the hope that exists in all girls who carry secret magic in their hearts. I think I'd just like to stay there, the whispered prophecy of my being fulfilled in those moments before my feet touch pavement and the monster of the week murders me. Okay. I don't really know how to describe these next two pieces. The first one I wrote a while ago, and the second one I wrote this morning at 2 a.m. And I decided I'm going to read it, so I'm sorry, maybe. Okay, this first one's called Old Earth. You observe the world. You waken to it observing. You look always for something you might call wonder and beauty and joy and truth and peace and change, if only those small words could fit together and contain it. You search, you waken to the world searching. You are at times afraid there was never anything to find, afraid that both you and the world are strange arrays of nothingness, but you search anyway, finding peace and horror in empty roads, which are both desolate and an endless promise. And this is the sister piece, which I wrote last night. It's called Old Sky. Driving through the dark. They say tornadoes might be here, but they can't say for sure. Night tornadoes are just that way, they say. Strange apparitions you disappear into. They used to not say at all, not talk about them. The weathermen held tongues so as to not scare you because there was no knowing, really. No way to call out a warning until after you were gone. Don't scare anyone. Don't mention by name. Don't summon darkness. Arcane power of words. The whisper of God so loud that nothing else remains, whose mouth will open onto you one day like the punishment for all knowing, the inevitable devastation of being, and you'll listen to it. An ancient tongue made of earth and sky, but somehow you'll know its refrain, as familiar as consequence. This is your storm. This is your storm. Okay. All right. Next piece is a piece I wrote a while ago, and I'm just going to read it. It's called Dear Icarus. Dear Icarus, when you died, it was like you in a car as a child, face pressed against the back window, cruel tyrant in the front seat, with a gentle and arrogant smile, not listening and too willing to tell us. You'll understand when you're older. I used to chase the dawn with you. We dropped sunbeams on our tongues, saw like prisms see, existed in infinite states all at once, both waves and particles, and all the madness between, never catching the sun, but feeling victorious for the moment, as though we had. I want those fucking days back. I want a coup d'etat. I want the tyrant that's in the front seat, that's in the cities we sleep in, that's in all the maddening silences and those conversations which will never now be anything but letters stamped and mailed to the void. I want that tyrant deposed and no funeral held. I want to go back to pretending that touching a sun ends in anything but loss. And I want you back too. Icarus, I didn't know that you'd fashioned hypodermic wings strung together on wax veins, fueled by desperation and awe. And I didn't see your ascents, not a single one, not once. But Icarus, if I had, would I have stopped you, or would I have followed? I'm told you fell in tasteful silence. Not a single cloud was disturbed. We went on, too lost in our foreboding, too fixated on being storms, too busy making thunder in the skies over Crete to notice at all as you fell like rain. All right. This last one I will introduce a bit because it's weird and it's silly and and it kind of fits. It's called "On the Revolutions of Heavenly Bodies," and the idea of it is singles ads from galactic formations. So here we go. Hi, you have a beautiful glow, solar star. I'm a single comet in your area seeking one-time gravitational slingshot. Okay. Next one. Okay. I'm a post-collapse neutron star that has completed my full transition into a pulsar. I've never been happier, and I'm looking to share my unique light. I'm drawn to all cosmic formations. It doesn't matter if you are a moon or a black hole. What matters is the gravity between us. All right, third one. I'm a warm, hospitable, and resource-rich planet hoping to one day sustain life. Schnapps-based evolutions only, though. I'm sorry, but non-traditional biotics just aren't my thing. Okay. Aging planetoids seeking a meteor for long-term lunar commitment. I've had my fill of grand romantic collisions and feel like that period of my existence is over. Too many mass extinction events have sheared my romantic layer. These days, I just want my tide ebbed, a practical, mutual pull we can share. Okay. Hot young planet here in close long-term orbit with 2 wonderful suns. We are seeking additional planets to join our beautiful system. I know binary star couplings aren't for everyone, but please keep an open mind. Our orbits aren't so different from your own. Okay. Single planet seeking orbital supernova desires a wonderful, luminous moment, then oblivion. Thank you.
Thank you. I really love that. Our next reader is Amber. And Amber sent me her bio in the first person. So I think I'm going to read it in the first person. Is that okay? Or maybe I'll read it in the third person. But know that it was written in the first person originally, because I think it's important. Okay, so this is words from Amber. I am a descendant of stolen people, forgotten and almost found. A baby in a basket. I am a storyteller, arranging blind dates between meaning and moments. A mouthpiece for deviance and quiet desperation. I'm Nina Simone and the half notes between piano keys. I'm a jaywalker, moving freely with my Black, queer, and feminist identities. I am light energy underneath the footsteps of monks. I host high tea with deities and ghosts. There is beauty in ruin. I was born in muddy waters. I was born. So that only does justice in the first person. In the third, it sounds so different. So that was beautiful. Thank you for that bio. So with that, here's Amber.
Okay. So I'm going to be sharing a spoken word piece entitled Soulmate, and it's in 2 parts, and each part is set in a different period. The first part is set in early 19th century, and then the second part is second wave feminist 20th century. So part 1 is Soulmate, 1836, A Tale of 2 Female Slaves. I met you in my previous life, but you didn't know my name. certain not to hold a gaze like two slaves on a plantation, wounded and afraid. They say the housemaids have it better than the rest, sleeping under cotton sheets safe from the elements. But the use of my breast to suckle other people's children has left me breathless. I wipe snotty white noses and prepare food with a stolen soul to satisfy the souls of my owner, struggling to maintain a mind of my own. The comforts of this house don't keep me warm. The humid air never rests, especially when Master finds my sweaty face in the moonlight and presses my leaking breast up against his great-grandmother's Victorian chest. Brass knobs that leave impressions, causing my nipples to split, dripping lactation stains in the 100-year-old grains of this wooden floor. The comforts of this house just don't keep me warm. There was a rumor that the rebels meet in the forest at the height of the night. I waited until I heard the familiar sounds of cum-laced drunkenness bellowing from Master's mouth before I tiptoed out. The creaks of the floorboards matched the desperation of my heart. I ran across cotton fields in hopes of finding its missing beats. I reached the secret fire surrounded by heated faces and stomping feet, praying our prayers, singing our songs. The ancient pool was like the altar call my spirit longed for. I found grace in that fire. And your eyes across the flames. The grief on your face was as clotted as the keloid scar that ran the length of your left arm. I noticed you. You noticed me. Checking the maybe box on notes we passed across the plantation, unwilling to admit that we deserved something better than purgatory. I remember the day you saw me on the porch. You noticed the hole in my apron that matched the emptiness in my eyes, finally penetrating my disguise to realize she's hiding too. And with every empathic thought and huff of humid breath, we began to stitch our broken hearts back together again and again with the unraveling strands of my torn apron. And in that incomplete moment, we heard it come. Like a raging thunder who got offended by changing winds, a whirling crack of leather whose fibers intend to disrupt your spirit more than break the skin. Master may have missed it, but Overseer misses nothing. My body was spared, while hers was forced to bend, and bend, and bend, and bend, and bend, and bend. And as we looked on, we witnessed the unintended consequences of one too many lashings, vengeance held in dilated eyes of intolerance, ascension beyond the imaginary horizons of enslavement's late-night cries, and after the beating subsided, we followed the moonlight back to our meeting place. I cradled your wounded body as you grieved 400 lifetimes of misuse and misunderstanding, but everything about my sweet kiss makes sense. My touch so tender we made intimate love with our spirits. Every star under these southern oak trees bears witness to our late night drumming, and they say joy comes with the dew in the morning, and I find peace in every piece of your beautiful brown eyes, and I always know, with you, this is where love resides. Part 2 is not as heavy, just warning. Part 2, Soulmate, 1979, Black Feminism Gone Wrong and the Awkward Third Date, which in lesbian time is like marriage. She stares at me. I think she likes me, but I'm not sure. There are tunnels of darkness in her eyes, tales of past lives that pull me back to my wobbling seat and remind me why we're sharing this bottle of wine. But there's an emptiness or maybe just a mystery that she hides behind, like hearses and dragons. And I find myself begging for some egoic reference, some piece of her. I mean, you. I'm begging for a piece of you, my divine, but how can I make an educated decision without insight into what makes you cry? And if you're too frightened, don't waste my time. I'm not reserved for experience rides only, but I am intolerant to those not willing to try. Besides, how do you even know that I'm your type? I was raised in the church, but I don't believe in God as we have come to know him in the Western world. I favor stones and oils that drive out evil spirits better than prayer does. My holy scripture is like the theory of relativity by Einstein, and metaphysics is how I orient space and time. I know God after I've come for the third time, or in the morning sunrise, or in freshly squeezed wine that drips from the gayest of vines. I find newness in the crackle sounds of vintage vinyl, and my idea of a good time looks like existential philosophy and conspiracy theories. It matters to me what my ancestors think of me. So I pray to them and I offer them treats, honey and cowrie shells to satisfy them and bring me prosperity. But my mind is so sadistic, I've made appearances in the devil's wet fantasies. I'm confusing and alluding like a Harlem jazz band. I'm manic like Josephine Baker and her banana dance. I swing from chandeliers and I hide in the pages of memoirs and salty tears. I'm a great baker, but not to be confused with a homemaker. My apron serves to protect my stature from the bloody matter that spins through blades of marital disaster. But I will look after you and bring you from the plantation to the promised land and expand your mind and open your third eye and emancipate you from society's disguises. I rub sage over your eyes and purify your sight so that you may see God clearly on the first try. And no need to wonder if, maybe, whether, or why you might be sentenced to die if my head slips in between your thighs. I can drink from your well all night, polish your diamonds until they shine brighter than the pieces of your peaceful brown eyes. Scream my name until you self-actualize. Fears will fall with your limp body impregnated with a new age spirituality. I can be your bride in white, chanting at the midnight seance. Let's grab my hand and let's dance to Odessa like we made God a bet. Or maybe just drift off in between the colors of the sunset and just rest. Let me see the gold that just rests in the locked chests of your mind, treasures so divine, it will unlock your heaven and mine. Because you see, this awakening, it's not just about you. You have jewels that bring new meaning to my life too. And she stopped me. She reached out to interrupt my desperate rambling. She touched me with purity and sincerity and gave me the gift of simple understanding by simply saying, I love you too.
All right. I'm happy to present Sarah Viren. Sarah Viren is the current writer-in-residence at the Kerouac House. Her writing has appeared or is soon forthcoming in the Iowa Review, Agni, Tri-Quarterly, The Normal School, and next month, the queer issue of Nanofiction, among others. In her normal life, she lives in West Texas with her wife and young daughter and works as a managing editor for the Iron Horse Review and teaches creative writing. And a fun fact, she is really good at dodging the rain with me. That's what we did last week.
Thank you, Ashley. And thank you to Amber and Claire for reading. That was really, I told them both that I was like almost about to cry. It was really, really powerful reading. And it's also just a really powerful experience to have everybody here. I had no idea when I came to live in the Kerouac House that I'd also be part of like a Queer Valentine reading, which it actually really touches my heart. I live in West Texas. There's no Queer Valentine readings. So this is sort of feels really loving to me. So anyways, I was trying to decide what to read. I was going to read something about being lonely and queer in West Texas, but then I decided we are in Florida. I grew up in Tampa, so I'm going to read a breakup story in Tampa, where I grew up, and it was after my first love. I think lots of us know about first loves. If you don't, I'm sorry. This is an essay, and it's called A Tremendous Fish. The first time I went fishing was in high school. We skipped class and went to the Hillsborough River, got high, and practiced casting lures into the water. I looked over at my best friend, bare, tan legs swinging off the dock, just above the tea leaf water, and I wanted to touch her. Our boyfriends tittered behind us, and we never caught a thing. The second time I went fishing, it was with my college girlfriend, a woman named Jennifer, who was slim-waisted and lightly freckled, and who I took to calling Penny because she was bright and shiny, but also solid and uncomplicated in a way that I liked then. She sought out bass on different parts of the same river in Tampa. We would steal out from our bed early in the morning for what looked like Tai Chi by the banks. Cast, reel, cast, wait. Later, she took me on a boat with her father in a lake in North Texas. I caught bass then too, but preferred drinking cold Coors Light and watching the darkened shadows of the fish on the boat's sonar system, the sundance of my bobber on the surface of the lake, and most of all, the ease with which Penny, my bass fisherman, would cast and reel, and then after a long stretch, catch. The last time I went fishing was after I left her, and that time everything was different. It was at night, and we weren't on a river or a lake, but in the dark waters of a bay off an island called Boca Grande in southwest Florida, where a fish called the tarpon is legendary, and almost everyone has a tale of catching one. Boca Grande literally means big mouth. The mouth, in this case, is a metaphorical yawn where the waters of the Gulf of Mexico meet the Charlotte Harbor at the island's southern tip, a spot where the shrimp and shark and tarpon like to congregate and feed. The Calusa Indians discovered Boca Grande sometime in the 1st century and included it in their fishing empire along Florida's west coast. Then the Spaniards arrived and the Calusa slowly died off or were killed. A railroad came to town, and by the early 1900s, the island was an important port for the distribution of phosphate, as well as a second home for rich people who made money off the phosphate and who liked to fish tarpon for sport in their free time. A regal yellow hotel was built, then a second one. The town square grew to include a gourmet grocery store, restaurants with white tablecloths, and a Lilly Pulitzer store. The DuPonts bought summer houses there, the Bush family vacationed there, and in 2002, I showed up there looking for work at the local newspaper, the Boca Beacon. This was 6 months after graduating from college and a month after everything fell apart with my bass fisherwoman. I brought with me a 3-page resume, espresso making, bowling alley, burger flipping, paper filing, waitressing, drink order taking, book order processing, publicity seeking. I want to be a writer, I told the editor, Gary. He had fat fingers and smooth, tan skin that reminded me of a river stone. He nodded, skimmed my credentials, and said he thought I had potential. He offered me $12 an hour, no insurance, and I accepted without hesitation. I had just moved out of the apartment I shared with Penny for 2 years and was living in someone's renovated garage. My professional duties commenced the next day. A weekly profile of an influential resident or local employee, a weekly brief on any local crime, and regular stories about new businesses, property taxes, golf cart accidents, iguana infestations, beach erosion, bridge toll hikes, and once the appearance on the beach of a 30-foot sperm whale. Less than a month after starting the paper, Gary informed me of one more requirement. Tarpon is king here, he said. You have to catch one. The story of the tarpon begins 100 million years ago. Wade back through a dozen climate cycles, through periods and eras long past, and there you'll find its beginning. One of the oldest fish in the sea and one of the largest. Its birth looks like the mating between a whooping crane and a crocodile. A strange dance, half air, half water, scales mixing with feather, mixing with flesh, mixing with fin. Because one important thing about the tarpon is this: they breathe. They gulp air just like you and me. In the tarpon, organs like lungs filter oxygen in concert with gills, sharp and bloody. The scientists tell us another story of the tarpon. Once, they say, these fish swam in giant herds everywhere in the Gulf of Mexico. Their lives began somewhere south, either in Florida or Mexico, where the waters are warm. But the tarpons are swimmers, if they are anything, and they chase mullet and shrimp and crabs. And so, with the warming of the weather each summer, they slither up the Gulf of Mexico on both sides, Mexico to Texas and maybe Louisiana, from the Florida Keys to Pensacola, and then finally the Great Mississippi. This migration has been their annual marathon for 100 million years. And for years, we have killed them when they reached our nearest fishing holes. And yet they have survived. Because they gulp air. Because they are as big as we are. Because of their eyes. They stare at you, a tarpon guide told me once with a conspiratorial glee. They lock eyes. Indeed, they were named for those eyes. Latin, Megalops atlanticus, meaning big eyes of the Atlantic. Silver King is their familiar name, the moniker evoked in fishing tournaments where dozens of beer bellies hop onto skiffs and skim the ocean in mid-afternoon, plopping down crabs or jigs, trying to snag the biggest tarpon of the bunch. They call them silver because of the color of their scales, a sweet blue metal that glimmers in sunlight, and king because of their reign. In small circles, tarpons are an addiction. They have ended marriages. They have killed those who love them, their silver blue bodies flying from the water and in a leap, slamming into a 20-year-old holding a rod and reel, knocking him from this world to the next. Tiny Poseidons they are. But scientists prefer the megalops reference. Their eyes are infrared, one told me when I asked him what it is about tarpon that makes them so unique. They can see in the dark. They are a very ancient fish. He had just published a book on studies on tarpon and hoped one day to count every tarpon that swims in the Gulf of Mexico. Too many people are killing them, he complained, if only they understood their worth. Because while we killed tarpon for years, one day or 1 year not that long ago, we began to kill too many. In Louisiana, they speared them to death. In Mexico, a mayor offered a truck for the biggest one. Others elsewhere were so poor and hungry they began to kill the oily, bony fish for food. But really, I wanted to tell the scientist, the tarpon are killed because they have so much worth. There are people who value them so much they want to memorialize the fish. They kill them and they hang them from the rafters of a dock for a picture. They kill them and mount their arching taxidermied bodies above the mantel in a lodge or a hotel. They value the tarpon enough to want to make them theirs forever. And therein lies the problem. This destructive form of admiration, maybe even love, is why there are now laws in every state prohibiting the killing of tarpon. We may fish them, yes, but after we have caught them, we have to let them go. On the day appointed for my tarpon catch, a captain arrived at Boca Grande dock with his boat Little Pris. It was 2 hours after sunset. He had been tracking the tides, watching the movement of the bait fish, and decided this was the time. Close to midnight, he guaranteed, the mullet would be running, which meant the tarpon would be biting, which meant we would get our great catch. We climbed on board, me in a hooded sweatshirt and cap meant to manacle errant blonde hairs attracted to wind. Gary and his mousy wife, Lynn. Rebecca, a tan, full-lipped advertising rep, rumored to be having an affair with the publisher. And the publisher himself, a short man named Dusty who had outfitted his island golf cart to look like a Harley Davidson. It was a weird island. Rebecca and I sat down in designated tarpon fishing seats next to the stern above a rumbling inboard motor. Rebecca crossed her long legs. Beside us, Dusty sat on an ice chest, camera in hand. The newspaper had no staff photographer, so he filled that role as well. We need to capture your initiation, Dusty explained. Tarpon virgin, someone else poked. This is unlike any fishing you've ever done, our captain, a man named Steve Futch, said, as he directed his boat toward the bay. Behind us, a lazy halo encircled Boca Grande. The inky waves reflected moonlight the color of polished teaspoons. Rebecca's mouth flashed white at our captain, and I tried to smile too, but I felt too nervous. Little old ladies the size of my pinky have reeled in tarpon twice their size, Captain Futch reassured me. You'll be more than fine out here. The first time we cast, I watched my line disappear into the night. The bobber jiggled, already so different from the ones I'd seen on the lake or on the river, where movement like that would mean a fish was already nibbling at my bait. Out there on the open water, it signified nothing more than an ocean swaying against the night. I sipped from my Amstel Light and refocused my eyes on the orange sphere in the sea. The first pull, when it finally came, was so hard it jerked me present. My line morphed from slack to a natural force, like that fear that comes before a steep fall in a dream, knocking you awake just as your body loses weight. All I could do was brace myself and yell. Captain Futch gunned the engine, then just as quickly as it appeared, the tug of life vanished. My line went slack, my tarpon lost. Shit, Captain Futch sighed. Dusty put down his camera. The water was so dark I couldn't see the waves. I met my bass fisherwoman when I was 18. We happened to be in the same coffee shop one afternoon and started to talk about books. I said I loved My Side of the Mountain as a kid, and she told me she had too. We'd both read lots of Sylvia Plath, listened to lots of Tori Amos, and refused to eat meat. It's like every lesbian. She had broad shoulders and big blue eyes that locked on mine whenever I spoke. I felt dizzy, and she felt right. My senior prom was a week later, and I invited her to the after party at a Motel 6. That night, we kissed for the first time in a shared double bed with the lights out, my friends sleeping in the bed or beside us or on the floor. The first time we made love was in my bedroom in my parents' house. We kept quieting each other so that no one would hear us. Afterwards, we watched the moon rise over the swamp through the back window of my bedroom and talked about our ideal house. Mine would have a spiral staircase in the kitchen, I said, and there would be at least one window seat where I could sit and read. I'd like a big front porch, she told me, and a view of the woods with a river running down below. I told my parents she was a new friend, but they knew better. When I finally came out, my mom's only response was, "You love her, don't you?" To this day, my sister still asks about her. She was so funny, she says. She was like family to us. She was a Texan and a college dropout who had joined the Air Force just to get out of there, as she told me later. She smoked Virginia Slim Lights, almost always wore a ball cap, and made wishes when the clock read 11:11. She taught me how to play pool, and I got her into Scrabble. Soon after we started dating, I went to college, and she went on a 3-month tour to Turkey, 3-month tours to Turkey, Saudi Arabia, then Italy. We wrote long letters to each other filled with the kind of things you say when you're that young and in love for the first time. I'm at a stoplight. It's raining. The rain reminds me of you, I wrote. Sometimes I whisper your name, Sarah, in the wind, she wrote back. And then later, I want you to see what I see and love it too, but you can't, and that's not your fault, the silent roar inside me. Each time we came back to each other after a period apart, the intensity I felt for her was renewed. I stopped making new friends and spoke less and less with the friends I had. She told me I was her best friend and she didn't need anyone else. We swore we were happiest when we were together. We swore it. Once we climbed on top of a strip mall and made love against the parapet. I leaned in the sheet metal and concrete, and she leaned into me, half standing, half falling. I looked up and watched the night sky until I felt her fill me. We cried that night afterwards, or maybe it was another night, because for a while it always felt like we were swimming together. Until the day came when I realized I could no longer breathe. After my first loss, Captain Futch showed me the crabs and demonstrated how to rebait my hook. Try again, he said. This time, don't pull so hard. I held the reel in my hands and put the crab bait on my hook and cast it again into nothingness. I was sure I would lose the fish again until I was so sure I would lose it that it seemed impossible I wouldn't. But after 20 minutes maybe, I felt it. It was unmistakable, that pull, that there was no time for me to pause. I yelled, "Fish on," as I'd been told to, and Captain Futch again gunned little Priss, and finally my tarpon latched. The fight that followed, because they still call fishing for tarpon a fight, really was like martial art. I reeled in the line, folded it upon itself like a kite that's run with the wind, and then pulled up on the rod, drawing my fish closer. I repeated and repeated and repeated. The night didn't get any lighter, and the voices around me crept in. Rebecca yelled from atop her long legs. Dusty took pictures. Even Gary began to cheer. The pivotal moment in any tarpon fight is never the end when you get your fish to the boat. It's several heartbeats before that, when your tarpon jumps for the first time. All tarpon do this. It's their last attempt at a fight, perhaps, or their final salute to grace. After you've pulled and reeled so much your arms melt into the night sky and your mind fixes only on relief, the tarpon on the end of your line leaps from the darkness of the water into the stillness of the air, letting you know that you've won, that she's yours. And sometimes when this happens, she locks eyes with you, a line in the night from you to her. And this is what happened to me that night. My fish jumped, and I felt for a moment a physical release on the line and a billowing inside of me. She was beautiful and airborne. Are you getting this? Gary yelled. Are you recording what this feels like? He wanted me to write a first-person story of my catch for the paper. Yes, I thought, there will be a record of this. I caught a tremendous fish, Elizabeth Bishop writes, when I peek into my dog-eared and well-worn collection of hers from college. And then I let him go, is how she ends. Her fish was homely and battered, his worth in what he had escaped over many long years, and he did not fight. My fish was bright and young and bigger than me, and her fight is why I remember her today. The other difference is this: I didn't let my fish go, not willingly. If I had been able to have it my way, I would have kept her. I might have hauled her in and hung her from the dock for a picture with me like they used to do in the old days. I might have had her mounted and hung her from my living room fireplace in whatever state or country I would eventually settle, with whichever woman I would eventually be able to keep loving without feeling trapped. The truth is, I left my bass fisherman because she first left me. One night while she slept, I sat on our porch in the thick Florida air and kissed another girl who took pictures and talked about poetry. A girl who had graduated from college and who I felt understood me, or the me I was becoming then. Telling Penny the story of that kiss the next morning was the unfolding. She woke up and looked at me in such a soft way, such an ordinary soft way, that for a moment I almost stopped myself, because I knew her eyes would change when she heard, and they did. I'm sorry, I said, after I was done confessing, but she turned her back to me and found a spot on her porch, casting her gaze back into the swamp behind our house without a word. I curled up on the couch and watched her, registering the beginning of change. A tug gives way to a pull and then a yank, and soon the kite at the end of your unfurling line is a fish, and that pull is a fight that you either lose or you don't. These things happen to everyone at least once, but then they happen to you, and you never forget. And I'm going to change hats now and introduce Ashley. Ashley has asked me to make up a bio for her, so I'm going to. So Ashley Inguanta is a escaped circus performer from Alaska. She has 17 children. She left them at home. She has a good babysitter. For a while, she was really, really into making carrot cake, and she had a sort of side business in carrot cake, literary carrot cake, though, because she would put poems on top of the carrot cake. Then she decided that it was time. One thing about Ashley is that she likes change. So she decided it was time to move on. And so now she's given up the carrot cake business. I think she's going to donate her kids to someone else. And she's moving to California, where she's going to start training to be an Olympic swimmer. I would also like to add that she is a beautiful writer in between all of that. She's a really, really lovely writer, and she's a lovely performer. And from what I've gathered in my short time here, she's also really great at bringing together community in Orlando. So, Ashley Inguanta.
Okay, so I had this complete and total moment of panic 2 minutes ago, because I don't know if this story is okay. I was like, maybe I should just read something else, because I don't know if it's a love story. I don't really know what a love story is anymore. This is about the first friend I've ever had. And, as a kid, we weren't together, but I loved her. And there's also a little bit of a loss of virginity thing in here. So I figured maybe it counts. Someone else, long way later. And this is called A House, a Girl. Part 1. Oh, and I open with a Joy Harjo quote from her poem, A Map to the Next World. I am ashamed I never had the words to carry a friend from her death to the stars correctly. Part 1. The day you follow me to that mound of oyster shells on the beach is the day I realize muscle and bone have been at war for a long, long time. We sit beside each other, and birds circle overhead, their wings curling and releasing, shoving air as heavy as your voice down my throat. I choke. You shove your fingers way down past my teeth and tongue, way, way down to that place where my lungs butterfly, pulling out the letter I mailed your mother after you died. You lift your head to the sun, say you've been following me ever since. And then you point to a space in the sea, rising and falling like a belly. This space contains the point in time where we split, holding our lives that had butterflied faster than both of our lungs could. We speak of this space, this time when we were teenagers, this time after our friendship ended. We speak of the burn that, if one starves for long enough, becomes almost musical. You are silent, your head still lifted towards the sun, my letter still pressed between your palms. The birds move their wings faster, pounding out a drum song. I ask you if this is what death feels like, if this is what it felt like when your own 22-year-old heart gave out months ago. You say nothing, and neither do I. Instead, I write about a house, a girl. Part 2. The girl started starving herself for real when she was 14. She and her best friend stopped being friends that summer, right after the girl got back to New York from Florida with her parents, who were looking for a new house. But even though the girl doesn't remember the exact day she started starving, she does remember being 15, being in between houses. The Florida house wasn't built yet, and the New York house was sold. So she and her parents went to live with her uncle, who lived 40 minutes away, near the tip of Long Island. At the time, the girl liked the way sharp things felt on her skin too, but starving was her favorite. It brought in this lovely secret song. In her uncle's house, there was this huge bathroom with a tub as big as the dining room table and a double-headed shower walled with white white and blue tile. The girl used to go into that bathroom and strip completely naked and stare at herself in the mirror head to toe. She wanted to be able to see each rib and to run her fingers over the places they dipped and pulled her skin. She wanted to see that sweet space where spine and ribs connect. The shape wasn't good enough yet. She wanted her back to look like a set of collapsed wings. Quickly, the girl became lighter. The girl thought of this lightness when she returned to that small New York town nearly 10 years after she left it, cut herself off from it completely, and wanted to start over. The girl was returning because of a dream she'd had. Her friend's house turned into a Noah's Ark. The next morning, the girl felt a tug, a curiosity. So she searched her friend's name on the internet, and a few moments later, she found her obituary. There's no explaining how the girl felt in those moments. Nothing was real, and everything was real. Her desk was there, real, but her hands felt heavy, like they were made of stones as she lifted them. Her apartment walls were real too, but she couldn't understand what the walls were keeping her from. She felt as if the world had become one long, flat field. And then she felt like she was standing inside of a kaleidoscope, all of those pieces coming together, forming shape after shape, one folding into another, until the only certain thing was this. Each bloom would disappear. She couldn't believe it, and then she did believe it, and then she couldn't believe it again. She drove, she parked, and she drove some more. She watched the sun rise and set over and over. At night, she would sit in bed and try to understand. She would try, but she couldn't. The girl had not gone back to New York in almost a decade, and the girl was bones, was lightness, for 6 years of that almost decade. She gained 30 pounds with the help of kind, understanding humans. She didn't want anyone to see the inside anymore. She craved muscle, some sort of strength. The girl remembered this lightness as she traveled north. The girl traveled from Florida to Brooklyn to Long Island and knocked on the front door of her childhood home. A blonde woman in a sweatshirt answered and took a good, almost breathless look at the girl. "I used to live here," said the girl. "My parents were the original owners." The blonde woman gave the girl a hug that made her feel safe, brought her into the house. "We just moved in," she said. "I'm Lauren." The girl felt as if she'd known Lauren for years, even though the two had just met. The girl stood inside the foyer beside the staircase, and Lauren stood next to her, waiting patiently, like she knew the girl would need time. The girl noticed the tiles first. They used to be white as shark's teeth, and now they're filled black at the grout. Wallpaper that used to be the color of seashells had faded and peeled like a snake shedding skin. When Lauren eventually brought the girl outside, she saw that weeds had grown between patio slabs. The garden that once held tulips and begonias was now hollowed. Some of the bricks surrounding the garden were sturdy, but others had fallen, split down the middle in an odd and clean way. I don't think the pool has been open since you left, Lauren said. The girl asked her if she could take some leaves and things, some leftover bits from the trees, and Lauren said yes. 2 children came out of the house, and they moved like their mother, calm, grounded, and happy. With what seemed like a genuine curiosity, one child helped the girl pick needles off the pine, and the other child picked her some flowers, some autumn leaves. The child who helped the girl gather needles stood on the brick wall extending from what once had been the garden, lifted her arms in the air. "That used to be you," Lauren said to the girl. And the girl remembered being younger, creating worlds with her friend. How simple it was to create worlds and how exhilarating. The girl looked at Lauren's child as she stood on the brick wall. And then the girl looked at the house next door. She tried to remember why she and her friends stopped talking. Something about glitter, a boy. The girl wanting her friend, and the friend wanting the boy. She tried to remember with precision, but couldn't. For so long, they were each other's main source of comfort in a small town. 8 years. They met each other at recess. The girl was 6 years old when she met her friend, who was 4, turning 5. Both were climbing Tire Mountain to the top. And the girl noticed how quickly her soon-to-be friend moved, how sure and how steady. Tire Mountain was a difficult climb, and the girl was always a little scared of it. But for some reason, the girl decided to climb that day. And even though the girl was unusually quiet, that day she decided to speak. "I'm so happy," the girl said to the other climber, "because I'm getting a new neighbor today." "I just moved here," the friend tugged her braids. "We should play after school." "Where do you live?" asked the girl. 42 Harris Street, said the friend. It was then the girl realized this was her new neighbor. This girl who climbed to the top of Tire Mountain with her was the girl she had been waiting for. The 2 girls grew together. They put lemons in their hair at summertime, hoping the sun would catch, bringing in streaks of light. The girls went skinny dipping in the Long Island Sound, walked to the corner candy store and sucked on jawbreakers until their mouths burned, prayed by the grave of the dog who lived on 42 Harris Street. Welcomed 2 twin baby boys to the same home. When the girls grew pubic hair, they shaved together. One girl put a razor in the other girl's hand and said, "I won't look." And when both girls had shaved themselves bald, they joked about how hellish the itch was and went outside and ate popcorn by the pool, lifting the crotches of their swimsuits too often to admire their clean skin. Lauren's child leapt off the brick wall and ran over to the girl almost weightlessly and gave her a handful of pine needles. "This used to be you, Ashley. This used to be you," Lauren said. She told the girl how happy she was to have moved in, to have settled, how they were going to renovate the entire house and make it beautiful like it was once. Lauren wrapped her arm around the girl's shoulder and brought her to the side of the house and opened a trash can. I started throwing things away, but now that you're here, she paused. I know some of this is important. In the trash can, the girl found tapes of 50s music, rose tiles from the upstairs bathroom, and a piece of cardboard with her mother's handwriting on it. As the girl studied her mother's handwriting, its tidy loops, she understood that this trash can had become a time capsule, and she could only dig through it because of unexplainable timing. She loved her mother deeply, but she didn't tell her mother how she lost her virginity to a woman in college who was twice her age, how she used to starve herself and run keys over her skin. The starving stopped first and the keys second. She felt confident with the woman, felt strong when she pressed the woman's clit to her tongue. She loved the way the woman's hands felt on her and inside of her. They had sex constantly for one whole summer, but when that stopped, she wasn't sure if she made the right choice. The girl wanted something to last forever, and she couldn't understand the gift of momentary intimacy, even though she desperately wanted to find that peace. She didn't tell her mother any of this, even though she wanted to. But years later, she would tell her mother, and her mother would understand. And years after that, the girl would find that specific, heavy sense of calm that comes with knowing that the temporary moment is all we have. But now in these moments, the loops of her mother's "oh" hit her hard. She thought of all the muscle she had gained and made fists and released them, and started placing the tiles, tapes, and cardboard in the bag with the pine needles, flowers, and leaves. The girl fastened the bag, hugged Lauren goodbye, and drove off. Part 3. I write about you because it's hard for me to remember this life before adulthood, life before Florida, the land where mounds of oyster shells mimic hills, where birds carry the heavy weight of your voice. I write and use the word girl because I think of what has happened, and it's hard for me to see myself moving over and over again in a tiny pocket of space-time. I write because I am feeling it all, and sometimes when these feelings stack together so tightly and so frantically, I can't even hear my own voice. I write because I don't know what else to do. I tell you this, and you lower your head, open your palms, and release the letter that once rested in the space between my lungs. You fold the letter into a house, its windows glowing gold, and now I am in that place between both of our houses. It's December. I've flown to New York on a plane and decided to pick up some old wallpaper scraps and tiles from Lauren. I told Lauren how scared I was to go next door, and she handed me a paper towel in case I needed it and said go. And then I got gone, and now I am here, trying to control my breathing, and it's freezing outside. My heart's racing fast. I am about to see your mother for the first time in almost 10 years. I am about to tell her something, but I do not know what. I knock on the door. A tall man answers, and I guess he's one of your twin brothers. He looks relaxed and rested. I can't stop staring at him. The last time I saw him, he was just a child and small, bouncing. Is your mother home? I said finally. He goes to get his mother, your mother, and I don't know what to say from here. My chest tightens and I try not to cry, but I do cry. Your house feels warm, and I remember you, how surely you climbed, how carefully you taught me to pray, how curiously you swam, and I try not to cry, but I do cry. I think of the earth spinning, and I understand that stars are nothing but epilogues of colossal and warm and unexplainable stories. These stars form a dome around the letter I wrote you months ago, which is growing from a house into a girl. You don't fold the girl back into one neat, flat page. You let her go. And now, moment by moment, she exists here, in the whole of our world, in the whole of the next. She can be anything now, the air that birds push and pull, the miracle of pearl and oyster, the glow of the moon, the footprints we cannot see but feel. If only we could pull back night's cloak. What would we be without paper, without story? I am on your street now, and it's quiet. The air is changing. The big sky opens wide.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for coming. This was wonderful. And yeah, go My Queer Valentine. Go Orlando. Have a good night.